Frontiers.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to your November Future Frontiers episode, where we talk about what's coming up on the podcast, what's coming up on Journey Through Sci-Fi, and what's coming up in sci-fi in general, in cinemas and on TV. How's it going, James?
Not bad, Matt. Not bad. How are you?
I'm good. It's post-Halloween. Spooky season is over. I'm feeling Christmassy.
Straight away. Straight into November.
Instant.
It's Christmas
Bang.
season.
The shops change and I change, James. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I did think it was weird that you're wearing a Christmas hat already for the podcast.
Got to break it in for the big day.
What day do you put your Christmas decorations up on? Like, do you wait till December or do you do it in November?
Pretty late. No, I don't really do it in November. I think that's too
It's
much.
Insane.
Yeah. You gotta let November be November, right? We've got fireworks to get through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fireworks all before all of that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's been a lot this month in terms of sci-fi films out in the cinemas, but on a different note from film and TV, I managed to catch the Stranger Things theatre show in London.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. How was that?
Really, really good. It's one of those things, I didn't know what to expect, and it's been a while since I've watched Stranger Things, but the whole show is basically a prequel of the story behind the guy who becomes Vector. So you see like younger versions of some of the parents in Stranger Things, and it's all different actors, but the staging itself, it's got this amazing kind of rotating drum. So scenes just move quite fluidly. And
Cool.
It feels like you're watching like something on TV or a film, because it's very interactive as well. They've got like a big screen that pops up. You've got actors coming from the aisles, all this kind of stuff. It feels like it's sort of all encompassing when you watch it. But yeah, it was really good fun.
It's interesting to do like a prequel to your show as a stage show. More common these days, isn't it? Doing kind of a theatre spin-off. Because it's really profitable, isn't it? If you have a successful theatre show, because you can tour that and make a ton of money off it. But it didn't really used to be the way that things worked in that multimedia way, it feels like.
It's like a nice extension of the brand as well, because I feel like more shows are doing this kind of thing. And also theatre is kind of morphing into film and TV in some ways, because now you've got like the Mrs. Doubtfire theatre show. You've got Back to the Future, the musical. It feels like they're making... I'm not sure how I feel about them doing this. I feel like theatre should be theatre. But it feels like a lot of films are becoming theatre productions now.
Yeah, there's a bit of it's like a fine line between a sort of cynical cash in on an existing property and making theatre like an accessible experience for everyone, because it's expensive. It's really expensive, and there's limited. If you don't live in a big city, there are limited options for your theatre. That's unlikely to be more than one theatre in your town if you're not in a big city. So, there's something to be said for making it an accessible experience that more people will go to, versus just to cash in on Mrs. Doubtfire. Not to throw shade on that production in particular. I haven't seen it, but you mentioned it as an example.
Yeah, I think there is still something about seeing those actors live and seeing the live productions, like when they did stuff like they did a thing called Secret Cinema, didn't they? Where they'd put on productions of films in real life and recreate the sets. They'd do stuff like Star Wars, The Shawshank Redemption, and it would be fully interactive sets and actors. So you felt like you were in the film. And all of that kind of stuff's quite interesting to me. Just it's making you more part of what you love. But then cinema is a very different thing, because it's supposed to feel a bit detached from what you're seeing.
Yeah. That I guess it is. Yeah, interesting. We can talk about that detachment and interaction a bit later when we talk about the films that we've seen this month.
Interesting.
Well, do you want to get into that? We talked about what was coming out in October and what we were going to go and see. You've seen a lot more than I did. What have you seen this month or last month?
Well, I feel like I've lived in the cinema this month, because I've caught most of the films we talked about in last month's Future Frontiers episode. So the first one I caught this month was Joker Folie Deux.
Oh, that's nice.
Is that how
lovely?
Folie Deux.
I don't care. That's how I want to hear.
I had to really struggle finding out how to pronounce that as well. I don't even know if I pronounced it properly now, and I'm sure
I didn't catch it. Is that term not used in the film?
No. No,
Okay.
not at all. Not that I remembered anyway. And I remember when we talked about it last episode, we just called it Joker 2, just to make
Did
it
we?
easier. So, but yeah.
How was it? I didn't watch it in the end. I was excited for it, and then everyone said it was terrible.
Yes, it's been very polarizing, hasn't it? I didn't love it. I did not love it.
That's quite surprising because you're quite generous, especially with comic book related films.
Yeah, it's this weird. It basically it feels like Todd Phillips never wanted to make a Joker film, which
Yeah.
is probably fair. But apparently he had a lot of push.
Well, I don't think anyone forced him.
No,
did
no
they?
one forced him to. But he went ahead and made it anyway. And then this one, it feels like DC fans would have wanted to see the Joker become the Joker in this.
Yeah.
Whereas it feels more like you're seeing a very troubled man going through a lot of like trauma throughout the film and sort of inventing this persona, and it goes down more that kind of route. And it's like the majority of it is set in a courtroom. You see lots of courtroom stuff. You see lots of stuff in cells. It gets very bleak at times. And then out of nowhere, there'll be a musical fantasy sequence, which is meant to shift the tone, but I don't know what it serves to move any of the story along. So it's got like some interesting bits, but it doesn't quite connect. And I can see why like major DC fans wouldn't have liked it. And I can see why just pure cinema fans didn't like it, because it felt like it was a bit, I don't know what comment it was making. It was just a bit there and a bit meh.
Oh, right. Okay. That's a shame. I saw all the sort of polarized opinions, and I went on a bit of a journey of like, oh, maybe I won't bother. And then I started to think, oh, maybe I do need to see this, because some people really hate it and some people seem to really like it.
But you saw another polarizing film, didn't you?
Yeah, I went to see Megalopolis, which I was really desperate to see, actually, because it was already having a very polarized response, although mostly negative, I suppose, in terms of the reviews of it. But I got in my head that like I desperately needed to see it in the cinema, because I thought it was going to be maybe crap, but maybe also like a bit of a visual feast, you know, the sort of thing you really need to see on the big screen. And, you know, there was this, did you hear about this audience interaction? So speaking of interactivity with your multimedia sort of experience, there was supposed to be a scene where the audience interacts with it.
Yeah, and I was really puzzled by that, because it seemed like it was only on at very certain times throughout the day, at least at all the cinemas that I could see. And I wondered if that was why.
No, I don't think so. I think it was only on at certain times because it was a massive sort of financial failure, to be honest with you. I ended up taking half a day off work to see this film, because even in its second week screening at my cinema, they'd shunted it to just one screening a day at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was obsessed with the idea of seeing it in the cinema. So yeah, I took half a day off work to go and see it. It was probably not as bad as everyone is saying. Probably about as weird as everyone is saying. A genuinely strange film, but ultimately just a film. Not like this utter catastrophe that everyone is making it out to be. It's not great, and it's definitely flawed, but you know, there is some really interesting visual flair. All of the actors are going completely insane, and often in different ways. Like the tone between the performances can sometimes be not complimentary. Like Shia LaBeouf is amazing in it, to be fair, and so is Adam Driver, but they're both acting completely insane and in ways that seem to exist in different sort of fictional universes. So it's very clunky. There's also the main character is called Caesar, and his sort of arch rival is called Cicero. And you might recognize those names. Obviously, you know Caesar, and Cicero is also a contemporary Roman of Julius Caesar. And I knew that much, but I knew nothing else about Cicero, and I don't know very much about Julius Caesar. And you immediately feel like, wow, I should know more about Caesar and Cicero to understand what's going on in this film. It's a real like it's set in I think it's set in New Rome. It's very obviously New York, but the word York is exchanged out for Rome, so it's New Rome, and it's all about the transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, but set in a sort of fictional modern day. So you feel on the back foot if you don't know very much about the transition from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire and Cicero. So that kind of left me on the back foot. So I was a bit frustrated about that. The audience interaction scene.
This is what I want to know about.
There's nothing. There's no audience interaction whatsoever. Like I'd seen it. It's the only bit of it that I had sort of seen a bit of a spoiler of, because I'd seen a clip on Twitter of someone talking to the screen, but there's no encouragement to stand up. Like the house lights didn't come on. There's just a scene where Caesar is like giving a press conference and he's kind of looking down and to his right, so you could stand to the left of the screen if you wanted to, but he's not, like, he's just delivering a monologue. So the only interaction you could have is maybe ask the question that he responds to if you knew what that question was, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't know if there's another cut of the film that is more edited to audience interaction, but it was non-existent. Anyway, it's a weird movie. I'm really glad I watched it. It has stuck with me more than most films do, and I think about it a lot. There's some mad stuff about, I don't want to give spoilers, but certain abilities that characters have that are almost supernatural in nature, but have nothing to do with the plot and are never used in the film.
Wow. So they've got weird powers that mean nothing.
One of them does, yeah. And if you've seen the film, you might understand what I mean. And yeah, it's just extremely strange. It looks weird. It doesn't always look bad. Sometimes it looks a bit cheap and bad, but always kind of interesting. It's a really interesting film, James. I do think you should see it, but no one needed to race to cinemas like I did.
But you sent me some great production facts about it afterwards as well. Like Francis Ford Coppola, how did he make
He's
himself?
got he's been trying to make it for, I don't know, 30, 40 years. Like he's wanted to do this grand fall of civilization as we know it film, transitioning to a new world. He's had that idea for a long time, and he's been, I think, proactively trying to make it since the early 2000s. He's obviously a very successful filmmaker, but he hasn't had a successful film in a while. And in that time, he's become independently wealthy as a winemaker. So he spent something like $120 million of his own money to finance it, just from the wine. That's just his wine business funded that. So, and I don't know, it didn't make very much money, which I mean, the writing was on the wall just with kind of the early reviews and the early screenings of the film, but you feel a little bit bad for him. But he's also, it's just it's an incredibly hubristic thing to want to make this thing, and obviously he could afford it. If you got $120 million of wine money, if that's what you want to do, then you either do that or you end up buying a social media network, right? If you've got all that money. So like, you're free to do that with your money, I suppose. That's his prerogative, but I don't think it's made him a great deal of money back. But he did what he wanted to do.
Yeah, I mean, more power to him for doing that. But I love that you took half a day off work to watch this as well. Like the dedication to see this.
To watch a mildly disappointing film, yeah.
Brilliant. In terms of other films that were out this month, I also caught Transformers 1, and I was really surprised about how much I liked this. I didn't think, because it's like it's got more comedy in it. You've obviously got Michael Key as Bumblebee. You've got like this great voice cast. You've got Steve Buscemi in there as Starscream, Scarlett Johansson's Alita 1. Megatron is played by Brian Tyree Henry. Chris Hemsworth as Optimus Prime. It's like Lawrence Fishburne's in there as well as Alpha Trion. It's got a great voice cast. I was like, okay, so they've got a good voice cast. It'll probably just be okay. But they really have fun with it. Because I think I saw this after I saw Joker, and Joker was just so disappointing to me. Watching Transformers 1 was just more upbeat, more pacing, brighter. Obviously, it's animated. And I think Josh Cooley has done a really good job with this film. I was just completely surprised by how much I liked it, considering it's a Transformers film. And Transformers is like notoriously bad when it comes to films and sequels ever since Michael Bay came along and did however many sequels there've been. And I often sing the praises of Bumblebee, that film, because that felt like it had more heart to it.
That was good.
But this one feels like it's more along those lines. And there's like funny, laugh out loud moments. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Obviously, it's a ridiculous concept, but also it's kind of going back to basics and explaining what's happening on Cybertron before, which is the planet where they all live. Yeah, it's really good. I really enjoyed that one. Way more than I was ever expecting to. So yeah, Transformers 1 was one of the ones I caught. Also caught Wild Robot.
Yeah, that looks quite good.
Yeah, this was like, it's just heartwarming. It's a robot who is raising a goose, and it learns like how all of the other animals interact as well. And it's kind of like saves them from the winter and becomes friends with a fox. It's all the kind of weird stuff you wouldn't expect a robot to do.
Is it like a friendly version of Scavenger's Reign?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, yes. And it's just very heartwarming, and it's like a nice one you can take your kids to. And yeah, it'll get you in your feels. So yeah, Wild Robot I caught, and also Venom 3. We talked about that.
How was that?
I mean, I know the reviews haven't been great to it, but first off, I was just shocked that they managed to get a trilogy out of these Venom films.
Yeah. That's an astonishing
That was just astonishing to start off with. Tom Hardy looks very different now to how he looked in Venom 2.
How so?
He just looks a bit more worn down by life. Let's put it that way.
Oh, no.
So, but I think it worked for his character of Eddie Brock, though, because it's like, look, he's gone through some shit in the past couple of films, and he's always just a bit bumbling now as well. Like, they make a whole joke in this film about how he doesn't have any shoes the whole time. He keeps losing his shoes. And it's a really random joke to have in there to be some sort of narrative thread throughout it.
Yeah.
But they had that. They do throw in like a bunch of other Venoms at the end. So it's like, let's have every multicolored Venom that you can think of that has some sort of relevance to the comics. They kind of threw that in at the end. They already have like teasers about some big bad, which could be in a different film. But this one very much feels like the final chapter for Tom Hardy and Venom. It feels like a rounding off of that.
3 Venom movies is plenty enough for any actor, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. He's got other things he wants to do, I'm sure. I also found out that Tom Hardy has like a rap alias.
Does he? What's his name?
Face Puller, or Frankie Polwitzer. It was great, and he's actually really good.
Is he?
He's on an album with one of the guys from Wu-Tang. It's called it's a group called Czarface. And I noticed because at the end of the film, they played this rap song. It had like Method Man on, Inspector Deck. And I was like, oh, who's this other guy? And it turns out it's Tom Hardy. And Tom Hardy is known for having this rap alias years ago and having like putting out a mixtape which everybody thought was rubbish. But now he's just like secretly doing rap songs in an American accent and creating this kind of rap alias and doing all these songs with the Wu-Tang, which I was just like, wow, that's great.
Is it a song made for the soundtrack?
This one was made for the soundtrack, but he's also done other songs with Czarface under this alias. So yeah, if you look up Face Puller, you'll be able to find Tom Hardy rapping. Yeah, great.
So quite a big month for movies in the cinema. You've been a busy boy, haven't you?
Yeah, or it's busy, or is it just like sitting in front of a screen in the darkness?
It's time consuming.
It's time consuming.
That's kind of busy.
It's eating into my time, sitting and doing nothing. But yeah, so I've been doing a lot of that in the cinema.
What about on TV? What have you been watching?
Oh, I've been sat on the sofa watching a bunch of rubbish as well.
So when you're not sat in the cinema, you sat on the sofa?
Just permanently sat, Matt. Always sat. When I'm not at work, I'm sat watching a film or a show. In terms of shows, I've been back on the anime. I said I was watching Attack on Titan last time. I've started watching a new show, which I think falls into sci-fi. It's called Dandadan.
Dandadan.
Again, it has an amazing theme tune. Because I didn't know how to pronounce this when I first read it. It was like, it's Dan-da-dan. And the theme tune goes, Dan-da-dan, 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 dan-dan, dan-da-dan, dan-da. It's great. And it's like this like Japanese rap, again, on the rap vibes, but it's brilliant. And the premise for this show is there's two high school teenagers. One of them believes in aliens, the other one believes in ghosts. And they dare each other to go to these two places, one which is renowned for having alien abductions, the other one is renowned for having spooky ghosts, and neither of them believe in either of these. And then they both end up having encounters with aliens and ghosts, and some weird shit happens. The boy ends up having his banana removed. I think they refer to it as his banana.
Okay.
Removed by a demon called Turbo Granny. So he is fighting to get his appendage back from Turbo Granny. And on the other side of the things, the girl is abducted by aliens and lots of stuff happens there. And it's absolutely bonkers, but I was totally here for it. Yeah.
Okay.
What TV have you been watching then, Matt?
Well, I'm still working my way through Picard, and it's still good. I'm still happy with that. Can recommend that. And then outside of Sci-Fi, all of Nathan For You has recently been put on Amazon Prime.
Yes.
Have you ever watched any of that?
It's so good.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, but I'd only ever seen season 1 before, so I've been working my way through that. And it's just incredible. If anyone hasn't seen that, I know it's not Sci-Fi, but yeah.
How would you explain Nathan For You to someone?
Nathan Fielder is he is a comedian and it is a comedy, but he is absolutely deadpan style of humour, and he plays a kind of amateur business consultant. So he finds a business each episode and suggests a way for them to improve their business, gets them to do it. The humour comes from the plans are obviously always a little bit silly or outlandish. The real humour, though, is that these are real people that he finds, and he genuinely seems to find some of the most insane people in the world, and they end up saying the most incredibly revealing things about themselves, and he just runs with that strangeness while never breaking character as this socially awkward business consultant, basically. It's incredible.
He's so good. The character is just brilliant, and I don't know how much of it is character and how much of it is Nathan
well, I want to
himself.
work my way through Nathan For You and then his other show, The Rehearsal, and then The Curse as well. I'm most interested to get to The Curse, where he wrote it and it's a drama and he acts in it, because I've never seen him not be Nathan Fielder and not be in character, so I want to see, you're kind of desperate for him to not be like that, basically. I'm desperate to see another side to him and a crack in that facade.
Yeah. Who's in that with him?
It's Emma Stone.
Yeah.
his
I
partner
remember
in that.
hearing lots about that.
Yeah, it looks good.
Well, you have to keep us updated on that, Matt, definitely.
I will do.
We've also got an indie pick for this month as well. We're both Benson and Moorhead fans.
Absolutely.
And we talked about Something in the Dirt over on Patreon, like quite a few months back now. And Michael Felker, who is a frequent collaborator of Benson and Moorheads,
he's in the Benson and Moorhead-verse.
He is. He's in the more Benson. Is there a more snappy name we can have for that? Benson and Moorhead-verse. We'll workshop it. Yeah, we'll bring it to the workshop. So he has been the editor. He was the editor on The Endless. He was the editor on Something in the Dirt. And he has now directed his own film called Things Will Be Different. And I saw this recently and was very impressed. And if you're a fan of Benson and Moorhead, it's all of that stuff you like about their work. Eerie, weird sci-fi time elements going on, trying sort of like to work out this kind of mystery box thing. It's got all of that stuff in there. The film is called Things Will Be Different. So this is going to be out on Blu-ray and digital downloads from the 18th of November. So it's about this brother and sister who are fleeing the police after a robbery. They're both estranged and they go to this mysterious farmhouse which transports them to somewhere. And we're not quite sure what's going on there. But it's a very interesting watch. So that would be my indie pick of the month as well.
Is that it? A magical safe house.
Now we wait for time to pass in our present. Then we head back and make sure we're clear.
Where's the key? There's got to be a key somewhere, right?
There never was a key. Hello. I can't take it anymore. There's no going home.
Is that what you really think?
What's that supposed to mean?
You are working with them. You brought me here to.
Why would I do any of that?
Someone is coming. Eliminate them before they reach the door, or you and your brother will die here.
Whenever we realize that we are in an excited state, we breathe in, take in our surroundings. Breathe out on the count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I'm really excited to see that. It looks pretty cool. I mean, aside from that, it's pretty quiet on the sci-fi front for films coming out in November, isn't it? But there is one major release that might make up for all of that. Dune Prophecy is on the way this month on Sky.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say Red One. Is that not
Red One, the Christmas action movie? Nah.
The one with Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans and fighting snowmen and... Yeah, it looks bonkers, that. I mean, I'm definitely going to see that. But then a Christmas film out in November, I'm not sure.
Does that mean they haven't got faith in it, or they've got a lot of faith in it? It's going to stay in cinemas till New Year's Day.
I mean,
I
we'll
don't know.
see.
No, I mean, Red One looks fun. It looks good for the kids, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's not... I know when I'm not the target audience or something, so I'm not going to engage with that too much.
Yeah. I mean, getting Dwayne Johnson and Chris Evans on something to team up will be quite fun. But yeah, maybe not our thing per se. But I'm still probably going to watch it because I live in the cinema, apparently.
But Dune Prophecy is on the way. I'm really excited for this. I'm keeping my expectations a little bit low because this isn't Denis Villeneuve, and it's, I think, based on non-Frank Herbert-y stuff. I'm not sure how much it's from prequels and how much is from the original novel's backstory. But it looks really cool. It's got the look of the films, and I'm happy to have some more Dune live action content. That's exciting.
I've been surprised about how dubious you are about this, given, I mean, that makes sense now you've explained it. Like, it's not Frank Herbert source material.
I don't think so. I think it's set like a really long time in the past in the timeline, and Frank Herbert wrote about that, but he didn't set any books in that time. It's all the stuff that's been done posthumously by his son that actually delves into that timeline in detail. And I'm not even sure if this is actually adapting that directly, or it's just sort of taking some of the history and sort of adapting it into a TV series. Yeah, no, I'm definitely excited. I don't want to get too excited because I just don't think it's going to be as good as the movies. So I want to meet it on its own terms rather than getting all hyped up about it and then being like, it wasn't as good as the film,
Yeah. Well, let's give it a chance and see what happens.
Yeah.
The sisterhood draws women from many worlds to advance our species and govern the future. The Imperium is fragile. The great houses fight for control. Now is the time to secure the throne and protect the Imperium.
This endangers everything. There are secrets we have gone to great lengths to keep.
Yeah, so that's coming out later this month. I think it's coming out on Sky over here in the UK.
So what's that, Now TV? Might have
Yeah, Now TV from the 18th of November, given my high-tech intel, which may or may not be wrong, but it'll be sometime in November, apparently.
It's on its way. And we've got Silo Season 2 coming out. You watched Silo Season 1, didn't you?
Yeah, I've read all the books as well.
Have you?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
I'm a big fan of this series. It's really interesting. So I would recommend that. It's on Apple TV from 15th of November, Series 2. You can catch up on Series 1 at the moment as well, obviously. It's basically a bunch of people all living in this silo. They've got this whole civilization in there, and they've got, I mean, I don't want to get into it too much, but it's a really interesting science fiction TV show. At the end of the last series had a big sort of cliffhanger, which I know gets resolved at the start of Series 2. So yeah, recommend that, definitely.
What's the big question?
What if everything you know to be true was just one big lie?
For as long as we can remember, everyone that goes outside, if killed by the dangerous toxins of an unsafe world, Juliet Nichols has to go out. She was a fighter.
Warning, oxygen levels low.
But she died a hero to the silo!
She might be out there somewhere.
Exciting. Okay, maybe I need to get caught up on Silo.
Yeah, you do, man.
Shall we do some listener questions, James?
Sounds good to me.
You've got mail.
So Jake Andrews has written to us and asked us, in the spirit of Halloween, we're a little bit late on this, Jake, sorry. In the spirit of Halloween, what are your 5 favourite sci-fi horror films? James, what's in your top 5 sci-fi horror?
I knew you'd come and hit me up with that one first. Okay, so sci-fi horror films. I think you'd put Alien in there. You'd put The Thing. So that would be 2. I've got that far. Sci-fi horror films.
We can make one collaboratively if you want. I'd add The Fly in there as well.
The Fly, yes. Great shout.
When we talk about Terminator, when we talk about it in depth, we talk about how scary it is. But for some reason, I never think of it as I never group it in horror in my head because it's such iconic science fiction tropes and imagery. But when you actually sit down and watch it, it's so scary and nightmarish that I think it really is a great sci-fi horror movie as well.
Yeah, it is a slasher as well, isn't it? So it's got that part to it.
So what have we got there? We've got a David Cronenberg, a John Carpenter, a Ridley Scott, and a James Cameron. I think Paul W.S. Anderson needs to be in the mix with those names, doesn't he? For Event Horizon.
Oh, you could chuck Event Horizon. I'm not chucking Event Horizon in.
No.
But yeah.
That is for me. That would be in my top 5.
I'd maybe think about potentially... I love Under the Skin, but I don't know if it's exactly the sort of film you want to watch on a Halloween.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's very slow paced, but it's so creepy, and the energy around that is very much like sci-fi horror. So I'd probably have that in the mix. I don't know if it would make it into this.
Okay, cool. Very interesting. I think we've covered 5 for me, but I'd maybe give an honourable mention to Possessor as well, which we watched a few years ago. And just really stuck with me. It's really just upsetting and unpleasant sci-fi movie, but really great. So another Cronenberg film there from a different Cronenberg.
Yeah, just what you want to stick with you after you watch the sci-fi horror film, being like upset and depressed.
Yeah, sadly.
So we've got another question here. This one's from Wayne. Wayne says, will there be updates to older episodes to include new movies? E.g., we did season 1 and we were doing AI. Would we do a update to our AI series?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Hey, we've got nothing better going on. But I mean, when new films come out, Wayne, we do try and cover most of them over on Patreon, when there's big new AI movies released in cinemas. But as far as like an update to an earlier season, I certainly think we might come back to something like that. We've just got a lot to get to is the problem. We've got so many subgenres that we haven't touched on that we have some rough plans for future series of the show. It might be quite a long time until we come around to do like a full season long update, but we're chipping away at new movies, aren't we, on Patreon?
Yeah, exactly. We're always like chucking extra things in. So I think we've covered a few extra AI films that we didn't cover on that main series on Patreon. And yeah, as Matt just said, like we're always updating stuff. And sometimes you might find an AI film that has a mad science element as well. So it might end up in our mad science series or one of our future series. So we're always thinking about ways we can sort of get these other newer films into series, and so we can discuss them, especially if they're making waves in science fiction in general.
Jamie has asked us, what are the most plausible sci-fi movies you've reviewed? Jamie says they love it when writers put the effort in to make believable hard sci-fi. But most contenders probably come from the dystopia series, unfortunately. I agree, Jamie.
Bleak, Jamie. Why does it have to be dystopia?
But I think Jamie's right. Those feel the most realistic. I think, sadly, I don't know. For me, *Handmaid's Tale*.
Oh no.
It is written in such a way that it's so near future and feels very realistic in the kind of universe they create in that show. That feels particularly realistic. There's also, I was thinking about the movie Her recently because I read a really upsetting story. One of the AI companies had to issue an apology because one of their users had taken their own life after talking to a character-based AI that they'd kind of, I guess, become a bit too involved
I read
with.
About that, yeah.
Which is a really bleak thing, a bleak sort of futuristic feeling thing to happen, and a really sad story.
Wasn't it specifically like a Game of Thrones, like a Daenerys kind of AI chatbot?
Yes, it was. Yeah, that they were kind of role playing with, and I guess had some problems of their own that they were working through. But yeah, just a really sad story. But it unfortunately reminded me of Her, and not in a good way. So yeah, that's not really a dystopia movie, is it? I guess it's got shades of that, but it feels like we're moving in that direction possibly, and not in a good way.
Yeah, I think the AI films, just as much as dystopia, seem to becoming more and more close to reality.
It's just a shame that the AI we're getting doesn't seem to be this sort of fully formed artificial intelligence like what Sci-Fi imagined and what we talked about in our first series, and is this kind of shitty language model that just regurgitates, stuff that it's absorbed and has no intelligence. I don't think the term artificial intelligence really captures what a modern AI actually is, because there doesn't seem to be a great deal of intelligence behind it. Just kind of, most of them just spit out the next most likely word, right? That's how it works.
Data scraping, isn't it? It's all that kind of stuff, which we've mentioned in the past. I think Gattaca feels like something which is closer and closer to happening, because you could do all of that kind of stuff now, can't you? You can pick which elements you want to get rid of from your baby before you have your baby and things like that.
Can you?
Yeah, you can, if they've got like a certain genetic trait, like in certain, if there's a certain hereditary disease, you can take out that element if you're doing sort of like IVF and things, which is Gattaca all over. Is there any you would like to be realistic?
Like Star Wars or something?
Yeah. Let's have something a bit more upbeat.
Let's move towards a utopia like Star Trek. Let's set ourselves on the right track for a change.
Oh, Star Trek would be great. Would you join up?
Join Starfleet? Yeah, of course.
Of course. You wouldn't have a choice. You'd have to.
You've got a choice, James. It's a utopia.
I mean, for you wouldn't.
Oh, I wouldn't have a choice. Yeah.
I'm not saying it's like you have to get enlisted into Starfleet.
That's not the vibe of Star Trek.
Gotta do your time in the Federation. What other questions do we have here? We've got another one from Rodders. He said, what is the earliest sci-fi show, movie, book, or comic that made an impression and got you hooked on sci-fi? Oh, that's a good one.
I've talked about it a lot, but for me, it's definitely Star Trek. And specifically, my earliest memories are like Kirk and Spock, the original Star Trek. I think I liked all the sort of sci-fi elements of it, but also I think when you really boil it down, it's an incredibly colourful show that's really exciting and adventurous. It's great for little kids. So I remember getting into that. And then alongside that, all the other camp, colourful sci-fi from roughly the same period. Flash Gordon was huge for me when I was little, and all the stuff that isn't really that great, to be fair, that BBC Two was shoveling into that slot. It's like Buck Rogers and the original Battlestar, all of that stuff as well. I have quite vivid memories of all that stuff. What about you? What's your earliest sci-fi memories?
Well, I think the reason this podcast works is because your earliest one was Star Trek and my earliest one was probably Star Wars.
Oh, right. Cool.
So we've got both sides of the fandom here. So I would say Star Wars. Again, Star Trek to a degree, like Next Generation when it was in that slot on BBC Two, the famous 6 o'clock slot where we got all of our sci-fi knowledge from as young children. I'd say that. I'd say X-Men as well. I think comic-wise, and when I first saw X-Men, the animated TV show, that really got me into the ideas of science fiction, like the fact that they are mutations and that's where their powers come from and all the things that go from there. And also had the superhero element, which I loved. I think that was a really big sort of part of my childhood, like all of that.
Yeah, I love those cartoons. That it was the cartoons were the way in for me, that kind of shared universe of Marvel cartoons in the mid-90s.
Yeah, definitely that.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more question. This is definitely a question for you, James. This is Tony from Sci-Fi Talk has asked us, what are your feelings on the original Planet of the Apes film? James, what are your feelings on the original Planet of the Apes film?
They are the best. They are definitely quintessential sci-fi that everybody should watch at least once in their lives. I think the first Planet of the Apes film is just brilliant. We did a whole mini series on Patreon about all of the original Planet of the Apes series, and then we went on and covered the films which have come since. But I think there's something about those original Planet of the Apes films, especially that first one and that twist at the end. All of it is just, I don't know, it just really captured my imagination when I first watched it, and I think it's the best, one of the best twists in filmic history, even though everybody knows what the twist is.
That's possibly why it's one of the best, is that the film is still incredibly good, even though everybody knows the twist. Along with, up there with like The Sixth Sense, where you can still enjoy those films, even though you know that it's got a huge twist at the end, and you probably know what that twist is. It's amazing. Yeah. So if you want to hear more about our feelings on the original Planet of the Apes film, Tony, we did cover Planet of the Apes in our time travel series, and then we've covered every other Planet of the Apes movie on Patreon. James is an enormous, long-time fan of those films, and I'm a happy convert as well, since we covered all the originals.
That's my biggest achievement of this podcast, is getting you into the Planet of the Apes films.
Good. Yeah, no, I'm completely on board. All right, so what have we got coming up this month for November, James, right here on Journey Through Sci-Fi?
Oh, well, later this week, we've got another main feed episode. We will be covering Dr. X and Time After Time in our Mad Science series.
Yeah, a couple of murder mystery mad scientists going on the hunt for some serial killers in different contexts.
Yeah, throw in Jack the Ripper into the mix as well, and H.G. Wells.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, and synthetic flesh, and lots of fun stuff in that episode.
It is my theory that one of us in the past, from dire necessity, was driven to cannibalism. The memory of that act was hammered like a nail into the mind of that man. Shrewd and brilliant, he could conceal his madness from the human eye, even from himself, but he can't conceal it from the eyes of the radio sensitivity.
I am talking about traveling through time in a machine constructed for that very purpose.
The first to use the machine, however, is Dr. John Leslie Stevenson, better known to history as Jack the Ripper. And what was to be a voyage of discovery, in an instant becomes a manhunt through time, from 19th century England to 20th century San Francisco.
The following week over on Patreon, we have got episode 3 in our Expanse mini-series. We have been watching season 3 of The Expanse, the final season on Sci-Fi before it got cancelled. So we'll be talking about the kind of what that means for the show as a potential final season before it gets picked up again by Amazon for season 4.
Yeah, it takes a few twists and turns in that series as well. It's very much in 2 chunks. So that's a very fun discussion that we've had recently about The Expanse. So that'll be up on Patreon as part of our mini-series on that series. So many series in that sentence.
No one tells you the hardest part of battle is figuring out who the enemy really is.
What were you thinking when Naomi told you what she did?
She's not the person I thought she was.
We've got no friends, no safe harbor. We are living on borrowed time.
I tend to take on fights that can't be won.
Do you like to whistle?
Why?
It forces you to breathe. Just don't pass out.
Be ready for anything.
The UNM ship just fired on us.
Missiles away!
We just declared war on Earth.
And then, following that, the week after, on the 21st of November, we are back to Mad Science, and we are looking at The Invisible Ray from 1936 and Darkman from 1990.
Yeah, mad scientists getting even madder as the movie goes on, really driven to madness by their science.
Yes, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and then we've got Liam Neeson turning up in Darkman. Bit of Bruce Campbell in there as well.
Going Sam Raimi mad.
Yes, Sam Raimi mad. You know you've really gone mad when you've gone Sam Raimi mad.
If your men fail to capture him at the gate, then at midnight we bolt all doors and darken the entire house. His face and hands will appear like phosphorus.
And if he touches anyone,
they die.
He has the power to look like any man.
These two are both sons of witches!
But he is unlike any man.
I gotta tell you something about me.
he's a cockroach. You think you kill him? And he pops up someplace else.
In the darkest hour,
Julie, who's the real monster here?
there's a light that shines on every human being. But one. From director Sam Raimi, Darkman.
And then wrapping up the month over on Patreon, we've got another bad movie bunker. We are going to be watching A Sound of Thunder. Peter Hyams directing a Ray Bradbury adaptation that didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah, 6% on Rotten Tomatoes for that bad movie bunker entry. So I think it's definitely worthy of the bunker.
Yeah, a certified stinker. But we'll see if it is deserving of that accreditation.
Yes. Will it stay on the shelf or will it be burning up on the radioactive surface above the bunker? We'll have to find out in the episode.
We're taking you back 65 million years to hunt the greatest predator the world has ever seen. Today, on this hunt, someone will die. The prey or the hunters. There is no middle ground.
Remember, whatever happens, do not step off of the path. We've got a major problem here.
The whole of time is being turned upside down. What happened has to be connected to our last jump. We must have changed something.
And what did you change?
We don't know. Somebody stepped off the path.
The changes in evolution that you affected come in ripples like dropping a stone into a pond. They start with climate, then vegetation, the early manifestations of life. What was that? Then come the more complex organisms.
You have to.
Have to what?
Set things right.
So that's your month of November here on Journey Through Sci-Fi, and that's what we're going to be watching in cinemas and watching on TV this month. I hope you've enjoyed listening to that. If you want more from us, please do subscribe and come and visit us on our website and our social media.
Yes, and we'll be back next month with another Future Frontiers episode. So if you have any questions for us, anything you really want to find out from me and Matt about the series, let us know what shows you've been watching, what things we've missed out, what things we should be keeping an eye on in the world of sci-fi. Do let us know. You can reach us at journeythroughsci-fi@gmail.com to send us an email, or you can just drop us a DM on any of our social media accounts.
We will be back soon with more Journey Through Sci-Fi.
See you then.